Alrighty, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. Just before we formally introduce Zach, I'm going to share one thing. I'm going to share one more thing, just a short 1-minute intro video for you guys to watch. You guys see this on the screen?
Nope.
Nope. 1 second.
Not yet. We see your face.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. So we'll just play this quickly. This is off
Drinking water before bed
geez.
burns 46 pounds in 2 weeks. If you are struggling to lose weight,
you know what? Hold on.
I didn't know it was going to be so educational.
So
You had it there for a second. You had it there for a second.
I had it loaded. And I think I swiped something.
No, that was just an ad that's coming up before the video. So you're just going to get
let
the
it
ad
run.
regardless.
Just the sorry, guys.
You ever wonder how YouTube makes all their money? This is how they make you watch these ads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't watch
I,
that first one because then we're in for a 50-minute video.
Yeah.
40 minutes.
I'm making sure I got the right one here. Here it is. Okay, let's try this.
I'm going to do something. I want to do it at its highest level. For me, it's really about that personal challenge of pushing myself to the limit. But as far as finding that edge, and sometimes going over it, trying to be the best at what you're doing. And these races, they're intense. The competition, the camaraderie, big teams, you act as one. You know, jumping over that wall, you know, you can make or break this race if you don't perform it. Goal for 2021 is simple. It's to win a championship. You have to think about the consequences. If you make a mistake, you get punished. I've never left a championship without winning one, and I don't plan on starting that now.
There we go. Right on. So
Good stuff.
the guy
Today
that
on Pfaff YouTube, we are exploring Pfaff Track Days. And today I'm here at a Pfaff McLaren Track Day. This is one of our biggest turnouts ever. And we are going to give you a behind the
There you go. Sorry about that. A little bit of technical difficulty with my dinosaur laptop here. So as you guys know, we're back with Zach Robichon. Super pleased he could join us tonight. Doesn't need a lot of introductory. We know he's the number 9 driver of the Pfaff Porsche GT3R, the 2021 GTD champion of the Drivers' Championship, 2019 sprint champion of the sprint series in the GTD, and 2018 champion of the Carrera Cup Canada. So he's Canadian, and if he's on track, chances are he's on the podium. So welcome back, Zach. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. It was lots of fun last time, and I'm glad we could make it work for me to come back.
Yeah, no, it's great. So last time we talked, or just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we have a lot of new members and some people that may not have seen it last time. Just growing up in Quebec and your road to racing here to the IMSA.
Yeah, for sure. I actually grew up in Ottawa. So for those who didn't join us last time, so basically, yeah, I grew up in Ottawa. I actually didn't start racing till I was about 14 years old. I grew up ski racing, which was kind of my first passion, but car racing was always something that was in one way or another part of the family. My dad did some like amateur Formula Ford racing when he was out of university, so kind of late 70s, early 80s, and then for his 40th birthday, for his midlife crisis, instead of buying a sports car, instead of buying a Porsche, he bought himself a go-kart to go racing with. So that was kind of my first introduction to car racing, and for a long time, until I was, like I said, until I was about 13, 14. So that would have been 2006. Skiing was definitely kind of my big thing. Obviously, I had a big passion for motorsports, but you know, for one reason or another, we kind of didn't get into it until a bit later on. And then from there, I spent 7 years karting. And then now I guess I just completed my 9th year. I was having a chat about this with somebody, and I was like, well, I guess that makes me like experienced. I can no longer say I'm like the young guy anymore. So yeah, I did 3 years in Formula Ford, you know, won the Canadian Grand Prix support race, and kind of picked and choose what races I would do. And then I spent 3 years in GT3 Cup in here in Canada, did half a season in the US in 2018 as well. And yeah, now, so I just finished my 3rd season, second full season. Obviously 2020 was kind of a shorter season, but last year did the full championship back in the IMSA GTD Championship. So for those of you who don't know, that's basically the endurance championship here in North America. You know, it's, you know, we do all those marquee races. We do 24 hours of Daytona, 12 hours of Sebring. And then kind of the regular season is these 3-hour sprint races, which Darren mentioned in 2019. I won that separate championship, which is basically exclusively scoring points for those 3 hours and under races. And then this year we were lucky enough, you know, whatever you want to call it, to win the overall championship. So that means basically all those races, all those 3-hour races, plus the 4 endurance cup races. And along the way, we won 4 races. Yeah. I gotta fact check that. Yeah. Sebring. Yeah. The 4 races. And then we finished second in the other 2. The second half of the year was kind of where we really kind of took the season by storm. And yeah, it was a great year. And my last year with Pfaff. So it was, you know, I've known that was coming for a while. So it was, you know, it was definitely on my my target to win a championship with them. They kind of became a family to me. So there was no way I was gonna leave that team without sharing a championship with them.
So last time we talked, Zach, you guys, it was that kind of middle season in your 3 years in the IMSA, and you guys were away from the track other than 2 races, I believe, the Rolex 24 and then the Le Mans at Road Atlanta. And it was all due to COVID restrictions, being a Canadian team and not being able to travel. So just take us, that was fall of 2020 we talked. Just take us through that winter, when you guys started focusing on getting back to the track at the Rolex in 2021, and what transpired through that late fall and winter, and how you guys focused on the hurdles, because in the beginning of the 2021 there still were a lot of travel restrictions. So what did you guys have to do as a team to return to a full season?
Yeah, honestly, you know, looking back at the beginning of the year, I think the stress related with the travel was probably higher than the stress related to racing. You know, I think the team, we had a plan. The reality was in 2020 we weren't able to compete for the full year, but we very much had the goal, and there was no way we were going to be stopped again in 2021, just for a number of reasons. Obviously, you know, as a team, competitors, you don't want to be away, but there's also a lot of partners involved. You know, we had Motul as our title sponsor, and, you know, a lot of these companies that were supporting us are based in the US, and not to say that COVID wasn't a thing in the US, but their approach to it, let's say, is a little bit different than us here in Canada. So, you know, racing in that type of situation, we didn't really have a choice but to go. And their answer was, you know, well, you can get into the country, whether or not you can go home is not really our issue. So for sure, we kind of had to get through that. And it was a sensitive subject at first, I think, especially because, we, looking at what was happening here at home, we were very cognizant of the fact that a lot of people weren't able to be out and about. And again, we were talking about this a little bit earlier in BC. You guys have been maybe a little bit more open than here in Quebec and Ontario. So I'm in Montreal, for those of you who don't know, and obviously the team being based in Toronto, like, people were stuck at home and we were kind of traveling a lot. So we were very, aware of the fact that we were lucky that we could compete. But what we did was, we were very careful, like, especially between basically Daytona and Sebring, which were the two races, and one in January. So Daytona 24 and Sebring being in March, when everything was very much closed here. We basically followed the rules that we have here at home when we were down there. So, we didn't go out to eat. We didn't go do any activities while we were in Florida, and we were very much kind of keeping to ourselves, which kind of got maybe a little bit of a side eye to some people. A lot of people were a little bit surprised by that. Some of the other teams were wondering why we weren't going out for dinner and whatnot. But the reality is that we wanted to be safe, and at the end of the day, we're still Canadian, so we're very thoughtful people, and we were kind of thinking about everybody at home. At the beginning for Daytona, I was lucky enough when I came home. Basically, what it was at that time is you provided your argument as to why you believe you were supposed to be, why you would be exempt from the quarantine. And after Daytona, I kind of presented my case, so to speak, and the guy let me through. And the rest of the team weren't so lucky. They all had to quarantine for 2 weeks after Daytona. Wow. So I don't know why. Maybe it's because I came in through Montreal, they came in through Toronto. And then for Sebring, that was right when we had started the hotel quarantine thing. So that was kind of end of February, beginning of March. And that time I did get sent. So I got the full hotel treatment, 3 days in a hotel. And that was a good way to kind of take the wind out of your sail after winning 12 hours of Sebring. And then you come home and you find yourself sitting in a hotel room that you weren't expecting to be in. So that was probably not, I wasn't in the best of moods, is probably the best way to say that. And then once we moved into the summer season, where we were traveling basically every 2 to 3 weeks, once you can show that you have a consistent travel pattern from the beginning, that's basically what they consider like a frequent cross-border worker. And then at that point, it kind of actually became quite a bit easier. We were kind of able to get into a situation. Obviously, I think at this point I've had like 48 COVID tests or something. So lots of COVID tests. And even when I would come home, like for Mid-Ohio, for Watkins Glen and Lime Rock, for all those, because I was technically a cross-border worker, and I had the exemption on my profile, I didn't actually need a return PCR test because I was crossing at the land border. But we still always did it because we were, we kind of went above and beyond. And then what I would normally do is once I was home, 3 or 4 days after I was home, even though I wasn't in quarantine and I wasn't being followed up by the government and whatnot, and getting those calls, I would still go and do just an additional COVID test, just to kind of be safe. So, you were very aware of that. And then luckily, as the kind of vaccination ramped up in the second half of the season, it became a lot easier. And then by sort of mid-July, it was quote unquote normal for the traveling. So that was much better at that point from our side. But definitely at the beginning of the year, it was tough and it was stressful. I'll never forget. So the first time was Daytona, and that we had to do our test before the race actually started. And my first stint in the race, literally the whole thing I was thinking, I was like, holy crap, like I just took a COVID test. What if I have COVID? And I was driving the car, and I was like, I should probably stop thinking about this. And then everybody's looking at their phone because they're like, oh my God, am I going to get a phone call? So it definitely, at the beginning, it was super stressful. I would say by the end of the year, you're kind of like, it is what it is, and we're going to deal with it. But it's an interesting time. It still is, you know. I think now more than ever, it's kind of, you know, as I get ready to leave here in about 10 days, I've been very careful, you know, because, you know, I'm gonna have to take tests to go down, and obviously I don't want to be testing positive. So I've been more careful than most through the holidays because, yeah, you know, there's a job to be done, and I know once I'm down there, you know, they kind of seemingly seem to be turning a blind eye to it, but, you know, I have to be able to get down there, and you know, I can't be sick. I have to be safe. So it's difficult. And I was really hoping, as the rest of us, that by this year, especially, you know, after Road Atlanta, it kind of felt like life was normal again. And then now here we are again. So I'll try not to stress too much about it at this point. I kind of just accept it for what it is, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, being pretty much the only cross-border team in IMSA, it's kind of a big stress you guys have that I don't think anybody else has. On top of the stress of COVID and trying to line up a full season, you guys brought in a new teammate this year, Lawrence Van Tour, with loads of endurance and Porsche racing. So prior to the season, working him into the driver, how does that work with a driver lineup when you kind of mix things up? I mean, Lars Kern stayed with you guys, and then you had Matt Campbell helping out on some of the longer races like the Rolex 24. But new teammates, how does the chemistry work when you guys prepare for a season like that?
Yeah, it's always a learning kind of environment. At the beginning, you're kind of trying to feel the other guy out. Am I going to like this guy? You know, luckily Lawrence and I had a lot in common. You know, we're almost the same age. He's a year older. He's got more experience than I do, but kind of the same point in our life, so to speak. You know, we have a lot of the same interests, obviously, outside of racing as well. You know, he's a big cyclist, and as you guys can see, I've got bikes in the back. So I'm maybe not as intense as he is on the bike, but definitely we had a few things in common. So kind of use that to break the ice. And the reality is most of us drivers, we are kind of alike. You know, you kind of have to be wired a little bit differently, and most of us get along pretty well. And actually, Lawrence and I got along great from the beginning. Super intense guy, to be honest. You know, I learned a lot from him this year. If there's one thing I can say about him, is that I've had lots of teammates. You know, just in the 3 years I've been racing in IMSA, I've had, you know, Scott Hargrove, Pat Long. I did one race. We had Dennis Olsen. I had, you know, Lars Kern, obviously, as you spoke. Then I did a race with Matt Campbell. We had Pilet last year. And then Lawrence this year. So, you know, I've had the opportunity to share the car with lots of guys, and just to be able to learn a little bit from everyone. And the one thing that stood out from Lawrence from the beginning is his dedication to racing. Racing is really, that's it for him. That's his whole life revolves around it. And it was something that was interesting to see how, you know, just the commitment that one can put into doing something, you know, that was super kind of eye-opening to me, I guess. You know, although we're all very dedicated, we're all working super hard, just, you know, to see him go that extra step. And, you know, it's funny, like I laugh about it now, but I remember at the beginning, like we were at Daytona, or maybe it was Sebring, and, you know, we were looking at the data, and, you know, there was two, three sections of the track where I was quicker, and it's like he was beside himself, being like, no, like this, I need to fix this, you know. And it was cool to see that. You know, I kind of laughed it off and being like, you know, it's going to happen again, which it did. But you know, you got to admire a guy who, although we're teammates, he's like, if you can do it, I can do it better. And to be honest, it was great. Best person to have as your teammate. Not looking forward to having a race against him. But at the same point, it was super helpful for me to just sort of see how, you know, little details that maybe I would have overlooked in the past, that he would would focus on and draw something out of it, and results would come from it. So for me, it was great to have that kind of person. Sometimes, you know, I'll say, you know, he's intense to a fault, where it's like, hey, like, you know, you got to take a step back and relax a little bit. And I think that's kind of where we had a good relationship, because he would find himself in this focus, and I'm a pretty kind of easygoing guy. If for those of you who don't know me and who can't tell, I try not to take my life too seriously. I kind of just want to enjoy myself, and I think that kind of helped him relax too, because he saw me being like, look, we'll figure it out. We always do, and you know, we're here for a reason. So let's just believe in ourselves, and let's go have fun. So it was a really great time with him and with the team.
And just for our viewers, if you're not familiar with some of the drivers in IMSA, Lauren's resume includes the Porsche factory driver GTLM in the previous series, and as well as he's got some, if I'm not correct, he's got some WEC World Endurance Championship experience, and he's participated in 24 Hours of Le Mans. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's won kind of all the big ones. He's won the 24-hour Le Mans. He's got the track record at the Nürburgring for the 24-hour Nürburgring. He's won the 24 Hours of Spa. I think he's even won Macau when he was racing with Audi. So yeah, he's got that bucket list pretty all the boxes checked.
So with you guys getting together as a team and the new driver lineup, let's just jump into the talk about the season a little bit. So we all know the IMSA season starts off with what everybody refers to as the biggest race of the year. It's kind of like NASCAR. The Daytona 500 is the biggest race of the year, and it's the first one. So it's the 24 hours, the Rolex 24 hours at Daytona. Just tell us about that race going into it. And I know it wasn't the greatest race for you guys, but just tell us about that experience.
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, kind of Daytona's our Super Bowl in a sense, and it's the first race of the year. It's a championship in itself. It's 24 hours of racing, and if you look at the rest of the year, excluding those 4 endurance races that we had spoken about, the 7 sort of regular season races, they total 20 hours of racing over 7 weekends, and you're doing 24 in one race. So, there's a certain level of, preparation that goes into it that's just second to none compared to the rest of the year. So it's definitely a different mindset. We knew we had a good chance at the championship. You see the lay of the land. We have a good product. We have a great team. And we knew we kind of had a strong driver lineup. So Daytona traditionally, is not a Porsche track. Top speed, straight line speed is rarely where we're the best, and torque. These are a lot of stop and go corners at Daytona, and that kind of torque of those, turbocharged engines that from some of the other manufacturers kind of helps them. And so, we kind of just wanted to survive Daytona, and it was a terrible, terrible race. We had a whole bunch of issues kind of happen throughout, and then eventually I kind of put the cherry on top by totally screwing it up. So that was really kind of my personal worst moment. I wouldn't say of the year. I would probably say like of my life, as far as like my racing career and my professional career is concerned. But it was, looking back on it now, it was probably a motivator for myself and for the team to get better. So it was basically we had some few issues in the race. We had contact at the beginning. We were trying to be very passive at the beginning. We were trying to kind of just let the race unfold. Let's just survive. And because of that, we ended up putting ourselves in situations that we shouldn't have been in. We got hit from behind because we were literally like, oh, these cars in front of us they're kind of fighting. We're going to like back off. Let's lift. We'll save some fuel. And then the car behind us drives into us, because we had this thought that we were going to have this, like, let's take a step back and we'll wait for the other 2 hours. But if other people are racing like it's the end of the world, they start pouncing on you, and then you become kind of like a sitting duck for incidents. And we had 2 or 3 contacts in the first kind of 6 hours, and then we had a big contact on pit lane sometime in the middle of the night. I don't remember exactly when. I was sound asleep at the time. I just got back in the car a few hours later, and they said, by the way, the steering wheel is kind of at like a 50-degree angle now, so that's straight. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we dealt with that for a while, and then we kind of knew we weren't going to win, was the reality of it. We just wanted to kind of finish on the lead lap. And then before I got back in, I think it was like 5 hours to go, we did a quick fix to the car to try to straighten the wheel. And I got back in, having driven the car with the steering kind of all screwed up. I sort of had that mindset in my head that that's what I was going to be driving. And then on cold tires, I ended up just getting out in the marbles and sliding up and just hitting the wall onto the oval coming out of the infield. And it was a decent hit. Not like, definitely nowhere near the biggest hit I've had, but the way I impacted it, it just spun the drive shaft. It broke the drive shaft. So that took us out of the race, which was tough to take. Obviously, it's one of those where as a driver, you're always like, no, it was somebody else's fault, but this one was really all on me. So yeah, it was tough. And now thinking about it now, I'm like, there's thoughts going through my head. I'm being politically correct with what I'm saying, so I'll keep it PG and just say I was not happy. But it was, as I mentioned, to be honest, it was one of those situations that you have or you will, is kind of what we say in racing. You have had an incident or you will. So I can say that was my incident of the year, and if I came away from it better, then it's so be it. I'm better now than I was before it, so it is what it is.
I think you're right. I think I can only imagine if you're going to spend a career in a race car, it's going to happen. It's part of the game, unfortunately.
Oh yeah.
You mentioned there Daytona's not really a Porsche track, and I just have one personal question that I've always wondered about that track. I've played with it on iRacing and stuff. I'm not pretending to know what it's really like, but the corner you mentioned where you had your incident coming out of the infield up onto those banks, I mean, what is that really like? Because I know what those banks must be like at Daytona, and to come from a flat infield out of those turns, and it's a left-hand turn up onto that bank, that's quite a transition, isn't it?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's a very awkward corner because your eyesight gets all screwed up, because you're opening up onto this huge wide tarmac, and then you have the banking up ahead of you. What kind of plays a trick on your mind a little bit is that on the banking, the amount of grip you have it's absolutely astonishing. And as you're coming out of that corner, you're sort of like, okay, I just need to get to the banking, and the car will hook up immediately. But the angle that you hit it, and at that part in the banking, you don't gain nearly as much grip as you're expecting. So you end up running up. I remember the first time I did it, I was like, oh shit, that was a lot closer to the wall than I ever thought I was going to get. Because you end up with this very kind of awkward angle as you come onto it. But once you're on the banking, it's I mean, even in the pouring rain in our cars, it's full throttle, like with your eyes closed. It's quite easy because we have so much grip and the downforce the cars produce. The one thing I will say is that first time I drove on the banking, because you're turning, but you have so much G forces that normally we're used to our head kind of being thrown around side to side. On the banking, it's quite literally like squeezing you down. So it's like rushing the blood out of your head. And the first time I drove on the track, I literally felt dizzy. And I was like, oh my God, like, am I going to have to deal with this for like 24 hours? And I remember this was 2019 at the Roar. And I was like, I can't tell anybody, like, this is embarrassing, like, I was like, nobody can know that, like, I feel dizzy on the banking. And I had only done like 4 or 5 laps on the first day. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to live with it. And then kind of got used to it. And I was like, okay, I think I'll be okay. And 2 days later, we were all at dinner, like me, Lars, Dennis, and Scott at the time. And we had a few beers, and then it comes out, after a few beers, you say, hey, like, did anybody else feel dizzy on the banking? And then all of us were like, oh my God, like, I thought I was sick. Like, I thought there was something wrong with me. And I'm like, okay, so it's not just me. So it's definitely a weird sensation. But then once you get used to it, actually, the hardest thing about Daytona is on your lower back, because that same compression that sort of draws the blood out of your head, it's squeezing you down, and you're not used to having to hold your body up in the seat. The belts, it's to stop you from moving forward side to side, but there's nothing really kind of keeping you from compressing. So after Daytona every year, the lower back just takes a beating, just from that kind of compression. Like, I'm sure we're probably like half an inch shorter after the race until we sleep and kind of stretch out again.
Wow, I can only imagine. And from the Rolex 24, you guys then go to the 12 hours of Sebring, and quite the different result and experience there.
Yeah, that one was obviously a good one. At the beginning of the weekend, didn't start off great in qualifying. We had an ABS issue with the car. So when I did my qualifying, we had basically a wheel speed sensor issue that we were able to sort out for Lawrence's qualifying, but that meant starting the race at the back. To be honest, being a 12-hour race, I wasn't too concerned about it, especially because we had already sorted the issue for the second half of qualifying where Lawrence got in. So I know in the long run, our car was good. We didn't necessarily have like, incredible one lap pace, but we could keep our pace for, 45, 50 minutes. So I was confident into the race. And I think probably about 4 hours in, we were either first or second basically for the rest of the race. And I remember kind of when I got out, last time I got out was probably 10 hours into the race, night had fallen. I did the second last stint before Lawrence got in, and I was sitting there with Lars, and I said, like, it just can't be, like, something's got to go wrong, because nothing's gone wrong yet. So I just hope whatever goes wrong, it's something minor and we can overcome. And, ultimately nothing did go wrong, which was, it ended up being one of those races that we made all the right decisions, literally didn't put a scratch on the car. We got lucky a few times. Good old Jimmy Johnson almost took us out at turn 17, but it was a special weekend, especially after the difficult, race we had at Daytona. I think it was sort of a huge morale boost for the whole team, especially after missing 2020. I think we needed that to kind of set our minds right for the rest of the year.
Excellent. Yeah, and for the team, is that kind of like you said, you had the poor experience at Daytona to start the season, you bounce back at Sebring. Did you guys kind of have a feeling at that point where it's like, okay, we're back, we can continue on here, and move forward? Did that kind of erase Daytona for you guys as a team?
I think so. There was I wouldn't say there was a doubt. There was a kind of a nervousness about having missed all this time. And I think there's more than anything, it was a stress that was caused by just by the situation in the world with COVID and everything. We had this added stress to everything we did. And it kind of always felt like your hands were tied a little bit, that there's too many things out of your control because of this. And this kind of made us realize, like, okay, but this is all worth it. It's, what we're doing here, this was, and it, one of those races with that, we'll remember. And, my dad jokes saying, oh, this is something you'll tell your grandkids. And I'm like, now I think about it, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But like, when you take a second to kind of sit back and think about it, you do kind of realize it's pretty cool. And it's definitely one of those. I think it's got us ready for the rest of the year. I know some of you guys were asking if the cat was going to make an appearance.
Yeah,
so
there he is.
He's back here.
He's back.
Yeah. And but yeah, so I think it kind of helped us sort of get into a better mindset for the entire season.
Excellent. One thing I had a question about, I believe the next race was Mid-Ohio, and you guys finished P6 there, and in the championship race at that point you're P4. I saw on social media that week, following you, that you took a different mode of transportation to that track. I think you, I think Porsche hooked you up with a pretty sweet ride to get down there.
Yeah, I did. So Pfaff and a lot of the Porsche centers around Canada were doing this Tycon across Canada promotion. Instead of doing like one specific ad process, we did this. Each Porsche center was working on a separate little kind of 2-minute video. So Pfaff or Porsche Center Markham actually was the one that did it, because they're owned by Pfaff. They're like, hey, like, do you want to drive a car down? And I was like, honestly, not really, because it is kind of more convenient to fly. But that was still when there weren't very many flights, and I was looking at the flights, and I was like, okay, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Like, because it ended up kind of being like a 12-hour trip for me, because I had to do the 5-hour drive to Toronto, and then the 7-hour drive down to Mid-Ohio. But I wasn't. I'll say this: I wasn't super excited about doing it in the electric car. I had my hesitations, going on a road trip like this, and for the most part, it was great. I'll say that on the highway, the car is incredible. It was a cool thing. You kind of drive up to the track, you kind of feel like a superstar driving around your Taycan. It gave me a lot of hassle at the border. Keep in mind, this was also the time where the border was still technically closed. So they're like, what are you, driving a race car to the race? I'm like, no, man. I was like, this is not a race car. Like, this is just a car. They're like, well, it's not yours. And you say you're racing for this Pfaff, and it says Pfaff on this car. And I'm like, I was like, okay. But, other than one kind of charging kerfuffle, let's call it, it was a great trip. And actually I got a newfound respect for that Taycan. I had spent a lot of time with it beforehand. I'm doing a lot of events with Porsche Canada with it, but on the highway, I have to say, I have had the luxury of driving many Porsches for many miles in different settings. On the highway, that car was probably the nicest car. It's like you could drive it through a hurricane and it's not moving. It's planted on the road, and when you want to pass somebody, you don't even have to think about it. You seemingly give it like half a centimeter of throttle and you're already gone. And as long as your charging network where you have the car is robust, then it's a great car. But let's just say in the middle of Ohio, it's not the best.
And from Mid-Ohio, you guys then continued on to Watkins Glen, and I don't want to dwell on all the races here. We'll go over some of them, but at Watkins Glen, you guys finished P7, and at that point, you remained in the championship race at P4, and then from there you went to Road America. So for the Road America race, I remember watching the interviews afterwards, and your teammates gave you a lot of praise in this race, saying it was a drive of your life. Just tell us about that race, and what went on there. You guys ended up winning that race, so just take us through that one.
Yeah, actually, before we get to the good, we'll go back to those bad races. So we had Mid-Ohio, Watkins Glen, and actually Lime Rock as well, which on like that video there that the team produced, they kind of skipped over it altogether. But those 3 races were kind of our most difficult bunch of races, and I think that's actually what sprungboarded us to the success afterwards, because those 3 races kind of being in the quote unquote regular season, we found ourselves in a situation where we needed to get back into that racing every other week mindset, which we had lost, right? Daytona and Sebring are kind of races in itself. They're championships in itself. Your approach to that is totally different than the rest of it. Those 3 kind of fall into what we would consider the regular season. And, we found ourselves, half step behind of our competition. The reality was we just weren't good enough as a team. And after those 3 races, and Lime Rock was okay, but Mid-Ohio, Watkins Glen, we were just making small mistakes as a team. And, I have to credit, Steve Bortolotti, who's our team manager, and he took a, very much a leadership role, and he brought us all in, and he said, look, like, none of us are performing at our best. And what was happening was that we were all trying to do too much. we were trying to make too much of a difference when, because we had missed all this time, we felt as though we needed to do more than what we already could do. And, what we had to kind of take a step back and remember is that we're all here because of our success that led us to here. And, a lot of the time you feel as though your good is not good enough, but sometimes you have to realize, your good is good enough. And because that's why you're here. And I think we actually almost took a step back after Lime Rock and just sort of went, okay, let's just go out and have fun. And from my point of view, it was at that point that I knew I wasn't going to be back with the team. So not to say that I had a point to prove, but I kind of had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder for the rest of the year after that point. So maybe that was their plan all along. They thought maybe I, motivate me a little bit more. And then that led us to Road America, which I think on paper, it was one of my best races. I don't think I really did anything special. I probably would say that, VIR was probably, although I didn't ultimately get the car in the position I did at Road America. I think Road America, the car was just so good that, we went from like third to first, and I was able to, I don't remember now, but I believe it was like a 12-second lead over the field, which when I gave the car to Lawrence, he sort of just kind of stayed there. It was one of those races where, you kind of just let yourself go. And in a way, knowing that I didn't have a job for the future actually just kind of allowed me to relax a little bit, because I knew that Pfaff was going to be going a different direction. And there was sort of a stress of, are they going to go with me? Or are they going to do something else? And at that point, it was like, okay, they're not. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. So let's just go out and just do what you can do and go out and have some fun. So it was, for me, it was kind of a good reminder that, no matter what success you have, you always have doubts. So that race, if anything, for me, I'll always remember it as kind of that race that reminded me, like, hey, like, you're okay at this, and whatever happens, happens.
Very, very interesting to go into a race with that kind of, I can see how it'd be. Now I know, so now I just got to go do my job for the rest of the season. And after that race, you guys won that race, and you were P3 in the championship. So it's kind of going into the second half of the season, and is that kind of where you guys you'd have some success and felt it coming together? And then going into the Laguna Seca, you guys had a poor qualifying, and it started off poor there, and I remember you guys not watching the qualifying the day before. It wasn't looking great to begin with. So what was Laguna Seca like?
Yeah, Laguna was, our philosophy for the whole race was, all through practice, we were focused on tire wear and make the car last for 50 minutes, which is roughly the length of a stint, because the asphalt there is so rough. So we didn't spend much time on making a car that was good for qualifying. Quali was tough. I think we qualified 5th or 6th, so we were kind of right in the pack, but we knew we were going to have some work ahead of us. But it is a track that there's going to be, if you can manage your tires the last 10 minutes of your stint, there's going to be opportunity, because the tire wear is in somewhere 2 to 3 seconds from throughout the stint. So if you can drive 0.3 slower for the first 5 laps, that's going to be half a second per lap the last 5 laps. So it's not it seems as though you're holding yourself back, but really you're pushing yourself forward. And we had really done everything for those last 5 laps. So although the qualifying was frustrating, I was kind of quietly confident, because even in qualifying, I had done like the same lap time 3 times, which at Laguna you shouldn't be able to do. It should really be like a 1 lap wonder that you kill the tire, and after that, you're kind of in your spot. So it was. I didn't think we could win. I thought we could for sure finish on the podium. The one thing about the GTD championship is the competition is just phenomenal, and you always need to have a little bit of luck to win. Obviously, a lot of the time you can make your own luck. You just have to put yourself in a position to finish in that top 3. And then from there, kind of anything can happen. So from Laguna, yeah, ultimately what won us the race was our lack of tire wear compared to the other cars, which was really our focus. So, Lawrence made some great moves. I think he went from fourth to first with he had to do 2 passes on track, and I had to do 1 pass at the start, and the rest of it kind of happened through the pit stops, and the team really gave us a car to fight at the end of the stints, which was what we needed.
And then you guys were P2 in the championship after that race. And then there was a following race after that was Long Beach, and you guys finished that race P2. Anything of interest took place in that race? I remember watching that one, and it was just kind of a run-of-the-mill race. I don't remember.
Yeah, nothing special. Other than like it was cool to race at Long Beach. It's one of those tracks that you watch as a kid and you're like, oh, that looks like fun, and I can confirm it is fun. So it, for me at the beginning, it was just quickly learning a new track. The track time was very limited at Long Beach, sharing the track with IndyCar. So basically we are 2 days on track, so 2 practices on Friday, qualifying, and then you race on Saturday. So there's quite literally you have like 25 minutes of driving before you go into the race. I think the most laps I did was in qualifying. And that was, yeah, like you said, it was nothing special. We were 4th sitting, then up to 3rd. We knew we had the pace to finish 2nd. And so when I was 3rd, I just saved fuel. So we came out in the pits in 2nd. We pitted a bit early from what I can remember. So we ended up getting overcut by some other guys because getting tire temp takes a while there. So we ended up falling back. So at the time, I don't remember why the decision was made to pit early. I think it had to do with there was a potential caution and we didn't want to get caught out. And then it ended up hurting us. But then after that, ultimately we had the 2nd fastest car that weekend. So we kind of worked our way back to where we needed to be. The reality was that Lamborghini on that track, which I think they were fastest there last time GTD ran there in like 2018 or something. They definitely had just a slightly better car. Like we had to have a gun to our head to try to follow them. And it kind of seemed like they were playing with us because as soon as I would start catching, I'd be like, okay, we're good. And then they'd throw in a lap and it was just like, oh, you guys are just toying with us now. So it was one of those where do the best you can and you can't win them all. And that, I think that mentality from the team was good because we, it's not that you're accepting defeat, you're accepting that you're doing the best you can with what you have and you can't make more of it, which maybe in the beginning of the year, we would try to make more of it when it wasn't there.
After a race weekend at Long Beach, do they have to redo that rose garden?
I think after I drove through it, they had to redo
it. And then you guys were off to Virginia, and I think this is where Virginia might have been the turning point of the season, or really kind of put you in a position to go on and win the championship. So take us through Virginia, because there was a big mistake right at the beginning, and you guys had to literally come from the back of the pack at that race.
Yeah, there was basically there's like a new format which they got rid of for next year. So it ended up being a 1-year thing where there was kind of 2 qualifying sessions in GTD, and between it, you can't touch the car. Basically a mechanic, just sort of blindingly, he wasn't done setting the tire pressures. So he went back on the car and set the tire pressures on the new set of tires, which you can't do. So we were basically disqualified at qualifying for touching the car. And so we had to start back. And that was, obviously at that time we were leading the championship, and it was, that moment was, I think, where we won the championship, because we absolutely had our back against the wall. The Lamborghini, the Paul Miller guys, I think they qualified 3rd. They were our main competitors in the championship at that point. With the BMW, I think they were like 2nd and 3rd. Those were our two closest competitors. And we're starting in last, and we're leading the championship. And, you don't win a championship without facing adversity. And this was now our adversity. This was our time to to collectively make up for our mistake. And I think going into the race, we quietly had confidence that we could get back to the front. I think, you know, from my side, I said, if we can finish third behind the BMW and the Lamborghini, basically we'll go to Road Atlanta all tied. I think we should be happy with that. And yeah, for me, you know, like you mentioned Road America, I think for me, VIR was actually my best race, starting at the back. You know, we worked our way up to, by the time Lawrence got in the car with the pit cycles, we were third. So effectively I got the car to fifth, but then with the pit stop cycles and everything, we actually ended up in third, which was, I mean, you know, big shout out has to go to the crew too, because their pit stops during that race weekend was absolutely unbelievable. They more than made up for their mistake on Saturday. And to be honest, I think maybe we just, you know, wanted to have a little bit of fun, and that's kind of what that VIR race felt like. It just was everybody absolutely motivated to make up for it. And I think at that point we could taste that we were now leading the championship, and it's like, hey, we made it this far, we're not letting it go. And that was probably, as collectively as a team, as much as Sebring was, you know, almost an easy race, this was collectively as a team our best race, because we faced the adversity, and Sebring was, it's easy to win when everything goes right. You just don't have to basically screw yourself. But when you do these weekends, you have to make it happen. And we really did that at VIR, which was, you know, ultimately, I think what won us the championship.
Unbelievable. Is that a tough track, Virginia? I've often watched it, and it looks narrow and ups and downs and sharp corners. Is it a tough track to drive?
Personally, I love it. You know, those, like, to me, like Daytona is the worst track we go to, like all these kind of Mickey Mouse tracks, as I call them, just a bunch of hairpins. Virginia's, you know, kind of a natural undulation track, you know, uses the natural landscape. It's a bit narrow, but you're never really going straight. You know, even the straightaway, you're going from one side to the other. It's a really enjoyable track to drive. Very challenging, but to be honest, you know, every track is challenging in its own right. A lot of the time, these easy tracks end up being harder because you almost have to focus more to like keep pushing. Like you end up at Daytona and you just get into a lull because it's kind of boring. Whereas a track like VIR it's so on the edge that in a way it's more difficult, but for us, it becomes easier because it keeps you engaged. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like,
Totally
it
does.
becomes easier for us to push the car to the limit because you're enjoying it so much. Whereas like at, you know, Lime Rock or Daytona, I keep coming back to, I really don't like Daytona. And, you know, you kind of, you're just kind of like, this kind of boring, you know what I mean? And you kind of end up like losing 2-3 tenths without realizing it, because you're just like driving around. Whereas VIR, you're just like, this is so much fun. Like, you know, you drive Daytona, you're like, okay, whatever, race cars, this is fine. And then you drive VIR, you're like, this is the greatest thing in the world. So it keeps you, it's easy to keep going.
Well, a lot of those tracks like Virginia and Road America and some of those ones are, I mean, they're much more designed for cars like you guys are driving rather than Daytona. I mean, Daytona, let's face it, it's a NASCAR track, and they put a road course in the middle to make use of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you guys go to the Petit Le Mans Road Atlanta, the finale of the year, and the competitor you were talking about had an issue there, so it actually played into the whole grand finale of things when you guys were able to secure the championships. Just take us through Road Atlanta and winning the champion. At that point, you guys were the champions.
Yeah, for sure. You know, we came in, we had a solid, you know, a marginal lead, I should say, over the Paul Miller Racing team. You know, I talked VIR, I talked Laguna, I talked Long Beach, and you know, first, second, first, but who was second, first, second was the Paul Miller car. So it's like that car you're trying to get away from in the points. You know, I have to really take a second and just appreciate how fierce of a competitor they were, because every time we had a good race, they were right there. And whenever we finished second, they won in that last stretch. So we knew they were going to be, you know, a super difficult team to race against to end the year. And to be honest, as an organization, there was no other team we'd rather race against, because they really are, you know, first class competitors, first class people, and it was too bad what happened to them. I think it was 2 hours in or so, they had contact with an LMP3 car, and it effectively took them out of the race. And for us at that point, basically it was like, okay, if we finish on the lead lap, you know, they're 15 laps down or 20 or whatever it was, we're set. You know, we can finish basically 10th or 12th. But then that race was, lots of stuff happened. There was a few big wrecks, which were very close to having us involved. You know, there was the wreck with the GTLMs, and I think it took out like 6 GTD cars. And basically on our rear view camera, like the crash was right there. So we very easily could have been caught up in that. And then basically with like 1 hour to go, we realized, you know, at that point we thought to ourselves, the best place we can be is like in the top 3, because we can stay away from all these, you know, whatever you want to call them, the threats. And if you're at the front, maybe there's less threats. So at the beginning, we were kind of like, let's just wait and see. And once we sort of saw the attitude of the race, we're like, no, we got to get to the front, because there's less issues there. So probably from hour 3 to 5, kind of the philosophy changed from let's just wait and see to like, let's get to the front, let's find a way, and let's just park out there. And if at the end of the race we lose some positions and we have to take a splash of fuel or something, who cares? Because we'll be out of trouble. And from there, I think we never had the pace of the Aston. Like, you know, they were just ridiculously quick the whole race. So we kind of knew second was the best. And, you know, with like an hour to go, basically it was not a guarantee. You know, I can never say guarantees. In motor racing, everything can happen. I think it was 25 minutes to go roughly, when the calculation of the amount of laps that the other car was behind, we knew we had won the championship. It was okay. Like, we told Lawrence, like, you know, we don't care if you wreck, like, let's try and win the race. And the reality was that he started catching, and then as soon as he would start catching, and, you know, I speak high praise of Lawrence and, you know, his ability behind the wheel. And then he would do this lap, we're like, holy crap, that was, you know, he's going to get him. And then the Aston, like, seemingly just like, oh, you want me to go faster? They go 3/10 quicker than us. And it was just like, okay, so we never really had a shot to beat them. But that being said, to be able to finish the year on a podium was obviously super, super exciting. And, you know, for me, if anybody's going to win the race, I was actually quite happy to see that Aston win, because my old teammate, person I used to coach, who then became my teammate, who's now my competitor, Roman DeAngelis, was driving that car. So I was very happy for him. So I was like, hey, if I can't win, at least I won the championship. So yeah, we'll let you win this race.
That's awesome. And then delivering the championship to Pfaff, as you said, was obviously you go into a season with that as a goal. I think every team does. And then it became it was a personal achievement of yours, especially knowing that you and the team are going to go the other way. What was that like, just to have accomplished that, and what it meant to you and the team, and how you guys celebrated? And
yeah, it was very very exciting, very special. You know, I started off with this team, you know, 3 years ago, and very quickly became, you know, a part of the group. They welcomed me in, and as much as anybody I've ever competed with, I felt like, you know, I talk to them all the time. I still do. And so for me, we hadn't won the championship, and every other team I've raced with, I've won a championship with, or basically whatever goal we had set ourselves, I had accomplished. So I was like, you know, this team that I feel so close with, I was like, there's no way we can leave here without this championship. And I guess it's easy to say that now, but obviously when you're in it, when I think about when I was racing, you know, Formula Fords or GT3 Cup and when you're racing that, you feel as though that is the top level, but the reality was it never was until this year. So now I look back at it, like basically we did that at the level that we did was incredible. And for me, it was about winning the championship, but being able to win it with that group of guys was made it that much better, because we very much were like a little family. And for myself on a personal level, it was, I didn't know what was going to happen, and I needed that. I wanted that. I guess I didn't need it. You don't need it. Let's be real. It's car racing. It's all for fun at the end of the day. But I wanted it, and I don't think I can explain how much I really wanted it, because I absolutely, it was a goal I set myself, and I don't set many goals. I'm not one of those like, oh, set a goal, get to the next step. I'm kind of like, oh, whatever, life goes on. But for whatever this one, I was like, no, like I need this. I need to win this. So it was very special. And yeah, to be able to share it with them, just looking back at the time I spent, I'll be very, very grateful. And I'm sure I'll end up with them again. But it was about, it was a team thing. And I couldn't have done it without them. They gave me the opportunity to race at this level. So it was about giving back to them for me as much as it was anything. And this was kind of my last chance to do that, knowing I was going to be with them in 2022. And it was like, they gave me this opportunity. We set ourselves a goal to win the championship. So I had to make sure I gave that back to them, because I owed it to them, because I wouldn't be there without them.
Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
Congratulations on all that. The championship, I mean, it's a huge accomplishment for you guys, especially the road of 3 years together, and then literally missing one of the years. I mean, that's huge. You talk about you guys going your separate ways, and this is due to a kind of a mix-up of the whole class of racing in IMSA. So they've eliminated GTLM, and there's GTD Pro and GTD. So I have a feeling that this is part of the reason you and Pfaff are going different ways, and you've gone on with a new team. So what is the difference, and what's the changing of the classes there? Because I've seen some other teams, it's mixed up a bunch of teams.
Yeah, for sure. So basically what they've done is in the past, GTLM, which was using the GTE spec vehicles, they could only be entered by factory teams. So it's like Pfaff could not enter GTLM. It had to be Porsche. So it was Porsche racing. And like even Rahal Letterman, it was, BMW team RLL. It was very much, you had to be directly associated to the manufacturer. And the reality was that the cost of it for the manufacturers wasn't worth it. So the GT3 platform, with which GTD has been based on for the last 5 years or so, is a much more economical. Economical is a very loose term. We're still talking, millions of dollars a year, but relative to the RSR program, it's quite a bit less expensive. So what they were hoping and what the manufacturers wanted was, we don't want to support basically the GTE, the GTLM, but we'll support a GT3 semi-factory program where a customer team such as Pfaff can enter it, and they'll receive support from a manufacturer. And then that's where kind of the GTD Pro came. So, I knew as soon as the announcement came out, whenever they did it, like in Daytona, I think literally Lars and I were sitting in an interview, and the press release came out, and we both looked at each other and said, oh, well, I guess we're out of a job. We kind of knew it back then because we knew Pfaff, we know those guys, we know they're going to want to take that next step. And the reality is that, they have been probably the strongest Porsche team for many years. So we knew Porsche would step up to support them, which is exactly what happened. And, to be honest, from my side, I'm just happy to see them, because I think they deserve it. And, the extra support they're receiving from Porsche, Porsche Germany and Porsche North America is so well deserved, and, kind of screws me, but at the same time, I'm so happy for them because they deserve it. And, that's kind of the way racing is. So it's, it's not a personal thing in any point. I think, when they told me that we weren't going to be back, and you know, they were going to do this, and they were going to have 2 factory drivers. Like I think they thought it was harder to tell me than it was for me to take the news, because I was kind of like, hey, that's racing. You know what? We've made it this far. We've accomplished what we have. Like, there's no point in kind of being sad about it. Obviously, it was tough, but at the same point, you know, it is what it is, and kind of life goes on. Yeah.
And then
And
so with all of that, you've moved to Wright Motorsports, who's a very high profile Porsche customer team, both in GTD as well as they run a Cayman in the GT Challenge series as well. So just tell us what that's like. And I know there's a lot of, you guys are very familiar with each other. I know you're on their back bumper, or they're in your rear view mirror, and you guys may have moved each other once or twice there with Pat Long and GTD and stuff. But just tell us your thoughts of going on with Wright Motorsports.
Yeah, I've been racing against Wright since 2018. You know, and I've known from the beginning how good of a team they are, because most of the time, like you said, they were more of a annoyance to me than anything, because of the fact that they kind of always seem to be around us. Even when I was racing GT3 Cup, they had a number of drivers I was going up against. And yeah, I'm unfortunately not doing the full season. So I'm only doing those 4 endurance races. So those kind of big marquee races. So Daytona, Sebring, Watkins Glen, and Petit Le Mans. And, you know, there was obviously, for a long time, I didn't know what was going to happen with the year. And for a long time, to be completely honest, until like October, I didn't even think I was going to be racing at all, just because of the situation, and seemed as though, you know, there was just kind of nothing around. And, you know, to be completely honest, in a way, it sort of had me sort of disheartened with the whole sport. I was like, you know, here we are having the best season of my life, and it's basically potentially all for nothing. But, you know, to have this opportunity with Wright, I think couldn't come at a better time. They have, like you said, a very great pedigree. They've been around for a long time. You know, John Wright, who's the team owner, he was involved with the Brumos team back in the day. He worked on those cars. So, you know, it's very much a racers group. And I had the opportunity to meet them and spend some time with them in Florida in, I guess, December now. And, you know, as much as I came from a very family-like environment at Pfaff to go to this team, I think the reason why we were often around each other on track is that as much as it's different and it's a different group of guys, there's kind of that same mentality that everybody's got each other's back, which was very cool. And I think for me, it'll make my transition a little bit easier. You know, although I'm now dealing with Americans instead of Canadians, at the end of the day, you know, everybody's there with the same goal, and their approach to racing seems very much like my approach to racing. You know, you do it because you love it, but, you know, we're not doing it to drive around in 5th place. We're doing it to win. And if we're going to show up, it's because we're going to put our best foot forward. We're not just going to be there to be there. We're going to be there to try and win. And I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully the start of a nice long relationship. You know, every team I've raced for now, I've spent 3 years with. So maybe it's in the start of another 3-year stint.
I have a feeling you'll be in race cars for a while to come. Aside from racing, what else going on with you? I saw this past year you were in a lot of Porsche Canada advertisements on social media, and I know you have your business of track instructing and ice driving. So aside from the track, what do you have going on?
Yeah, I mean, so basically, again, for those that don't know, so I run and own basically an events marketing company, and we run all the Porsche experience events. So anytime you see a kind of a Porsche event going on, that, you know, that's kind of our company that does that. You know, we have at this point, we have, I guess, 4 full-time employees, and we have 35 contractors that work for myself and my partner. And we, you know, we run about 140 event days for Porsche, and we also do a few other little things for different manufacturers, but 90% of our business with Porsche, and my focus is on that, and some of our other guys kind of take care of the other programs and the other manufacturers. And then obviously because of that and the racing, I end up doing, like you said, a lot of that Porsche advertisement stuff. And, you know, for me, it's just because I have a very good relationship with them. And to be honest, it's more a marriage of convenience than anything for them. They're like, oh, we need to shoot this video. They're like, oh, who can we call? Oh, well, Zach's already at the track with us, so he might as well just stay and do this for an extra day. That's usually how those happen. So it's, you know, it's super exciting. It's a lot of work, especially navigating all these ever-changing COVID regulations. I think I've spent more time redesigning programs and rebooking staff and changing dates of programs than I actually do organizing them, which was what I'm supposed to be doing. But you know, it sure beats going to the office every day, and this is my office. You guys are in my home office. This is where I spend most of my time. And when I get bored, I just go. Right now the bike's on the trainer, but if I get bored, I take the bike out, and if I get really bored, I drive up to the cottage an hour and a half away and hit the slopes and go skiing for a bit. So you know, when it's all put into perspective, I work hard, but I also make sure I kind of enjoy myself, because it is something that, you know, my life where it is now, I think, you know, 5-10 years ago, I probably never would have believed it would happen. So sometimes I got to remind myself to enjoy it.
100%. You know, I think when you say like Porsche Canada and stuff asks you to hang around and do this or do that, or hey, Zach will do that. I think it goes to the fact that you're a class act and you're a big part of Canadian racing. I know personally, I've watched you for many years back to the Career Cup, and you know, when you think of all the professional race car drivers that come out of Canada, in my books, you're right up there with all of them. You're champion over and over again in a lot of your levels, and I think we're going to see you on the podium again. I want to thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to open it up to any questions. I don't want to. We used up a lot of your time, more than I was planning on. So
No worries.
I appreciate that. But if you guys want to just undo your microphones, if you have a question for Zach, just go ahead. I'll open it up to you guys.
I think we got one here in chat from Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
Long-term goal, ever changing, to be honest. You know, like I said, I'm not one of those big goal setters, because my goal is whatever's in front of me is to accomplish it. But if there is one that I want to do is I want to race at Le Mans. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen, but that one remains probably the top of the goal, and probably what has happened in the last, you know, 2 years, that maybe certain races that were never on my radar is the 24 hours of Nürburgring and the 24 hours of Spa. Those, you know, those marquee endurance sports car races have kind of come into light as, you know, I see how competitive they are, and I've kind of added those to the list. So hopefully, you know, maybe this year with a lighter schedule, I can start making some steps to try and get my name in front of the right people, and maybe achieve those in the next few years.
Right on. Does anybody else have any questions for Zach there?
I'm just going to unmute here and rather than type, because I suck at typing. So, Zach, you know, every time I've been watching a race that you've been in, I've always been amazed at how you seem to find another gear from people around you. Every time you're on a stint, it seems like every single time your team pulls ahead, you're always finding time over the people around you. Where do you find that other gear? How do you motivate yourself to push so hard every single race?
A great question. I think it starts with the fact that I kind of suck in qualifying, and I always get very frustrated after qualifying. And I think part of it, so because of that, in the races, I'm like, get me out of here. Like, let's go to the front. But to be honest, when I realize, I think about it, like what kind of brings that extra motivation that, like you say, is, to me, on a personal level, I can't speak for the team and for the others, but for me, the racing is what I enjoy. You know, to qualifying is, some guys have this absolute, you know, that you ask them what's the best thing about racing, and they'll say it's putting the car on its absolute limit, 120%. I'm going to do this qualifying lap. And to them, that's the exhilaration of, what's the coolest thing about driving a race car. To me, just put me in the race, because for me, the most exciting part is the competition, and going wheel to wheel with these other guys, and having that, going for the pass, and basically it's like a big chess match, and being like, okay, let's try and force somebody into a mistake. Where is the opportunity going to come up? And it keeps me a lot more activated than a qualifying lap, which has been like, okay, let's go for it, let's hang on. And I think, to be honest, in a way, it's the enjoyment of the racing, and then it comes out on track as a other gear, so to speak. But for me, that's what I race for, is those opportunities on track, and having the other cars around me and pushing myself. Whereas in qualifying, for whatever reason, I think part of it is I have this huge mental block over, like, I don't want to crash the car. And in qualifying, you feel, because you're pushing the limit in a different way, you kind of have that hesitation, and that's always kind of been my issue. Even going back to karting, it's qualifying has always kind of been my weak point. And yeah, let's draw from a hat, let's go racing, and I'd be super happy.
Phenomenal.
So if you had a choice of any type of racing in the world, be it sports car racing, open wheel racing, karting, whatever it might be, NASCAR, anything, what would your number one favorite sport in autosport be? What would you prefer to do of anything?
As a viewer or as a driver?
As a driver.
Yeah, I think, for that one lap pace, obviously open wheel racing is kind of special, because you get to drive these vehicles that are, they have more grip, they have, kind of sensation like no other. But there is no racing like sports car racing. NASCAR, obviously, I think would be pretty cool. But the one thing I love about sports car racing, and specifically GT racing, is we are very reliant on aerodynamics, but there's also a lot more mass being thrown around. And because you kind of have this marriage of the old school kind of heavy, big motor, big tires, and still the technology that comes on these GT3 cars with the aerodynamics, you kind of end up with a very special sort of blend of racing that, you can kind of get a little bit of bumping and kind of give somebody some loving if you need to. But then at the same time, you do have this car that drives, especially in high speed corners, very much like a high downforce car. So to me, the enjoyment I've had driving these cars compared to, open wheel cars and prototypes, driven LMP3s and stuff, to me, this driving is just more fun, and the racing is better. And as based on that last question, you can tell, for me, the racing is where it's at. For me to drive a car that's 5 seconds faster is cool and it's great. But if the racing's going to suck, then I'm like, well, that's no fun. I want a car I can race. And I think that's kind of where sports car racing has a very good middle ground, where you're not going to the point of NASCAR where the cars maybe aren't super sophisticated. They don't handle that well. We have these, phenomenal vehicles that are, when you think about it, are scary fast. Like we're in a slowest class, and we're doing the same lap times that, the top cars did in the late 90s and early 2000s. We're faster than the original Daytona prototypes were, and they were the top class only 20 years ago, but we're still able to race, kind of that old school together, which to me is pretty cool. So yeah, I think, honestly, I'm happy where I'm at. I'd love to try like a V8 supercar or something someday. Mm-hmm. And, maybe a stock car just to say I did it. Maybe those Trans Am cars are pretty cool, but to be honest, like that, I don't really have any interest to do like open wheel stuff, because I just want to race.
That's so cool. And sorry, I'm going to just take over on the questions here for a second.
No worries.
You're talking about Daytona and how you're feeling a bit lightheaded from the banking and the cornering speed and the G-forces. What kind of G's are you pulling on those banks?
Yeah, I don't know.
A lot, obviously.
It's not like a huge amount. I think like at a normal track, we're probably in that kind of 3-ish range, 3.5. So probably what happens with Daytona, it's that instead of being kind of side to side, it's the compression. So it's probably around 2 to 3, but it's the fact that it's up and down versus side to side that makes Daytona different. I think the highest G forces laterally are Watkins Glen, just because of that high grip level of that track. But I don't actually know what the numbers are.
That's pretty
Sorry.
cool though. It's hard to imagine leaving a track and being shorter than you were when you got in the car.
Exactly. It's good to get a massage. Porsche gives us physiotherapists, which are much needed, especially at those long races.
Right on.
I have a question. Have you noticed any kind of differences between sort of the racing culture or style or etiquette, whatever you want to call it, between racing in North America versus in Europe?
Yeah, I would say, and this just goes to just competing against different, nationalities, and be careful how I answer this. I would say, for the most part, North Americans are a lot more respectful of each other on track. We kind of, for whatever reason, for the most part, there's more mutual respect. I think it's just the big thing, and a lot of the European culture. And like, I remember when I raced the Formula Ford Festival in England, it was literally like, I was like, these guys are all insane, and you kind of have to adapt to it. And it's not a question of like that they don't like each other and they don't have respect for each other, but it's when they're on track, it's no rules. It's, I will do everything to beat you. And if it means like putting you in the fence, like, so be it. Don't put yourself in that situation. And that, I think it's the racing we grew up watching. Like, NASCAR is built around being able to go too wide for God knows how long, right? Whereas in Europe, they don't have that. They grew up watching Formula One, where it's drive, you're on the inside, the other's going off. And I was lucky enough to kind of grow up in karting, where we sort of, in Canadian karting versus American karting, which American karting is very much centered around kind of the NASCAR IndyCar way, which is you give each other room and side by side. North American karting was much more influenced by the European style of racing, where, once you're on the inside, the guy on the outside, you're gone. Sorry, this is not for you anymore. And so I kind of was able to see both sides, and it very much becomes a question of knowing who you're racing. And basically, every person you come up with, you have to know your competitors. You have to know who's in the car, because you're going to race them differently. If Paul Miller car in the past for Daytona, you'd have Andrea Caldarelli or you'd have Brian Sellers, both equally quick, but you're going to have a completely different, aspect of mentality of racing. Brian, he's not going to push you off the track. He's going to go and he's going to make the move, but he'll give you room. And like Caldarelli, who's Italian and Lamborghini factory driver, he's going to drive you off the track, and he's going to be like, "Oh, sorry." Well, he's not going to say sorry. He's just going to do this and be like, "I don't care," And for whatever reason, I don't know, but it's just kind of it's just different. And yeah.
Well, that's fascinating.
I just saw David's question here. Yeah, that's kind of the beauty about sports car racing, is that the different tracks, you have different cars that are better suited for it. And obviously there's that balance of performance, which is something that the series does to try to adjust all the cars to be as competitive as possible. But sometimes either the BOP's out of the window for whatever reason, but a lot of the time it's just, some tracks are better suited to some cars. Like, Road America, for example, is a track that traditionally is very good for Porsches, just because of that high braking, lots of heavy braking zones, which our car is often very strong in. Whereas, Road Atlanta's fast flowing corners and top speed being super important, where the Aston is often very strong. So there's always certain tracks where different configurations of cars will be beneficial, like at Mid Ohio, the Lexus, extremely quick all the time. Watkins Glen traditionally will favor a high downforce front engine car, whereas we're kind of a medium downforce. We're very good on mechanical grip, not necessarily. We don't make necessarily huge downforce numbers, and we have good top speed. We have good power. We just don't have mega torque. So, like tracks where you have lots of acceleration uphill, like Road Atlanta, that doesn't play into our favor. So like turn 1 at Road Atlanta, it's the first sector, timing sector at Road Atlanta, for example, is literally from start finish line to the top of hill to turn 1. So it's about 9.5 seconds. And in that 9.5 seconds, we are 0.3 slower than the Lexus, for example, because they're just mega downforce, lots of torque. So turn 1 plays right into their favor. But then through the next section, which is undulation up and down, hard braking into 6 and 7, we're super strong through there because that section of the track basically works into our favor. And this goes into the strategy of the whole race to being like, where am I fast? So where am I going to be able to pass? So if I have track position, are they faster than me in a section where it'll be easy to pass, or vice versa? So these are all things that factor into the strategy with the pit stops, because some tracks, you're like, hey, even if he's half a second faster than me, I know he won't be able to pass me. So, get me out before him and I'll save fuel. So let's short fill, get me in front, because I know I can hold him behind, because where he's quicker than me, he can't pass. Whereas at Road Atlanta, the Aston basically drove past us on the straight, like we were stopped. So there was no chance, so in those situations, it's really one of those where it's like, okay, deal with what you got and we'll see what happens.
Cool. Does anybody else have anything for Zach there?
Well, I'd just like to say, Zach, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you coming on with just our little club way out here on the West Coast. I feel like I'm talking to a rock star, and you've been so gracious and generous with your time twice now. And I'm really looking forward to watching your next series of races. And you brought it to a whole different level for me on a personal level. And it's because you're such a personable guy. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Yeah.
And Zach, if you're ever out here on the West Coast and you need a car to drive, we'll find one for you and we'll drive. We've got some great highways and great roads out here. So
I
have a question.
Really nice 944 sitting in someone's garage.
Yeah.
Say, hi, Zach. Lynn and Uli here out on the West Coast on Vancouver Island. Long time no see.
How are you?
Good. Congratulations again since we last saw you. You keep bringing it home. A quick question for you on the winter driving. How are the protocols different, like in terms of people swapping cars after sessions, or how are you managing that in Quebec this season?
Yeah. Are you guys signed up?
Actually, we were trying to go to Finland. Okay. And then we thought, well, maybe Canada, at least we don't have to leave the country since we're level 4, right?
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, so we so last Thursday, actually, we sent out an email to all participants. So we went from 48 per wave to 24. So essentially what we've done is we've gone from 2 people per car to 1 person per car.
Interesting.
And instead of making it a full day program, 9 to 4, because it's only 1 person per car, we're running basically 12 to 4. And we've basically altered the schedule to basically do everything, but you have your own car. And no restaurants are open, no bars are open. So everything's going to be in-suite dining. So we'll have, you'll have basically all of your meals delivered to your room at the Estoril. And we're not going to can't do any offsite dinners because all the restaurants are closed. You can't sell alcohol in the bar and stuff. So it's definitely going to be a different experience, but luckily we'll still be able to run a program. It'll just be very, it's much more about the driving and less about everything else, because there is nothing else.
Okay, so would you stay in the same car for the day then?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, maybe we'll see you as things shape up.
I'll be there.
Okay, good luck with that. Thanks.
Thanks.
Right on.
Just when you thought the world couldn't be more complicated.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right on, Zach. Well, I think we'll let you go. I appreciate your time. Like I said,
No,
kept you a little later than we intended to, and appreciate it. Once
all
again,
good.
we'll be watching and chatting with you on social media and whatnot, and cheering you on. So yeah,
Awesome. Appreciate it. Well, thanks guys for the time, and I'm sure we'll talk to you guys again.
yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Have
Zach.
a good
Good
one.
luck.
Thank you.
All right, see you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Where's the recording of it? There we have it.
And Darren, thank you again so much for taking this on. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
What
no
an amazing
problem.
guest.
Yeah, no, he's just one second.